Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to another episode of Soul Over Matter podcast. I'm your host, Michelle, and today we have a special guest, my co author in my book, Heart Centered Leadership, John Paul Kingston, who is a holistic health and transformation coach. So, welcome to Soul Over Matter, John Paul.
Thank you, Michelle. It's an honor to be here.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm a little sore. I've been dancing a lot lately, so my body's just firing all these neurons and all these different muscles that I haven't used. And yeah, so I'm feeling sore, but I feel alive. I just
Mm,
feel alive, making connections within my body and other people. And to be here to share whatever we're gonna dive into is exciting, and I'm here for it.
Woo! Whatever's gonna come up will come up, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. What kind of dance, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of contact improv and ecstatic dance lately. Um,
Mm,
so it's just contact with another person and improvising in the moment. And so it's about a lot of listening and feeling and subtle communication, nonverbal communication. And yeah, it's really allowed me to deepen into this harmonization of masculine and feminine, to lead and follow, to uh, communicate, and to also listen and feel. And it's become like my new thing.
yeah, dance is amazing. I've gotten into ecstatic dance over the last year, and like you said, it's like working out, it utilizes such different parts of our bodies, and we kind of go into a trance sometimes. I don't know if you've experienced that. It's like
Many times.
you're so embodied, you're so grounded that your mind and like your soul can go elsewhere while you're moving. It's really transformative. So that's amazing.
Yeah, that's what I love about it. I think a lot of us are stuck up in the mind, and this is something that I talk to a lot of people about. Is we're inundated by this programming and the pressure of the mind. And one of the things I help people with is to get grounded. And when we can get grounded, that's when we can, I feel, transcend or reach the heavens, because we're here in the earth rather than just kind of floating around. One of the things that I always tell people is the world doesn't need more balloons. The world needs more grounded humans, grounded men and grounded women.
We don't need more fairies floating around.
Well, I wouldn't say fairies are balloons. There's a distinction.
Oh,
Fairies are earth people. They're
yeah.
forest people. They're grounded. They're tapped in, you know?
I've been told I'm pretty etheric. I'm like, but I'm just a fairy. But yeah, I know what you mean though, because, and we can talk about this, so many people on this journey. And I'd love to hear your story too about awakening and moving into more conscious thought. A lot of people just want to ascend, right? And just go into the ethers and just tap out of earth. But we came here to be in these meat suits, to be in these bodies, to feel our emotions, to experience life, and we can't bypass it.
Exactly. Exactly. We have to be here. We have to be in it. We have to experience it. And through that experience, that's where we are able to tap into the ethers and come back. And I think integrate it and share the knowledge and the wisdom that comes through that experience.
Mm, yes, I love that circuitry, right? It's all connected. I always say we're the bridges. These human bodies, our time here on earth, it's like we're walking bridges between heaven and earth. We're these channels, we're these mediums and these teachers and these leaders, right? So with that, I would love to hear your story, your awakening journey, how you got to where you are, anything that feels pertinent with your experiences.
Yeah, I think it all started at a young age, being in nature, like I talk about in my chapter in my book, in the book Heart Centered Leadership, where I found a lot of my connection with life and spirit and God and the birds and the bees and the animals was sitting next to a river and fishing on a river. And I was very blessed and fortunate to have been basically vacationing in a way, taken to this river multiple times a year, where I got to just listen. And
Mm.
I was actually having this conversation with a friend yesterday. The water was the master teacher for me. Just watching the river, seeing how the fish move, where they're at, just observing nature was this like master teacher that also allowed me to silence, to be quiet at a young age, and to remove myself from the societal conditioning and inundation and programming of advertisements and all this stuff that's here, that's beautiful and can also be a distraction from what I've come to discover. Like the purpose for me and what I share with people is to like come back to this heart, come back to our space, and come back to what we're here to do. And as we do that, as we live that and be that, that's where we're able to affect other people. So yeah, a lot of it started in nature. And I had a lot of trials and tribulations growing up, um, being in and out of it, and coming back to the contrast of school and friendships, finding myself falling into that beautiful chaos of just what happens as a child growing up and trying to be somebody who maybe we're not. um, at least that was my experience. I was trying to I was a people pleaser also. And so I yeah, I found myself doing things that weren't really resonant with me. But then every time that I would come back to nature, I would be like reminded, like, oh yeah, this is who I am. This is how I get to show up. And this is how I get to learn. And so it was this constant like in and out that eventually I got to a place where I was like, okay, this is a place where I can listen to my heart. And now I get to really integrate that into my day to day life and live in that purpose rather than living for other people, um, or what other people were encouraging me to do and to be, rather than encouraging me to be who I am
Mm.
completely. So, yeah, a lot of it started at a young age. And I'm really grateful for that. And another thing that comes up within this is a couple near-death experiences that I had when I was 2 years old. And I don't remember this particularly, but when I was 2 years old, I was I was on this river, and it's like the river's down in a canyon. It's about 150, 200 feet down into this canyon, and there's cabins up above it. And I was like 2 years old running around, and um, I tripped and started tumbling, and my uncle like ran over. My mom and my aunt were watching, and they saw this, and they yelled for my uncle, and he came running and grabbed me by the foot and maybe saved my life.
Mm.
Um, and so I was reminded of that story many times growing up. And there was this like, yeah, this knowing that there's a purpose for me to be here. Um, and again, I also kind of forgot about it. And so I spent a lot of time, I was a college baseball player, and that was like a big a big passion for me, and it was a dream that I was able to fulfill. But once I graduated college, I lost that like sense of direction, who I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to do in this world. I had things that I love to do, but I still just like it's kind of just floating around. And found myself out in Oregon for a couple months and had this experience where I got really, really stoned, really high, after a day of like picking dandelions for this beer, and to like it was going to go into this sustainable brew. And so we're picking dandelions all day. I got really high. I'm drinking beer, and then I go to this guy's house, and he's like, "Hey, do you want Do you want a dab? And for people who don't know what a dab is, it's like a concentrated form of wax and cannabis. And I was at a point where I was like really conflicted with drinking and smoking. But it was still like, I was like, there was this attachment to it and this dependency upon it. And I said no. And he's like, oh, come on. Like, it'll just, just a little one. I dropped my boundaries and I ended up taking this hit. And it was a big, it was like a dime-sized clump. And I immediately just like started coughing and was instantly lifted out, like just lifted off. And I remember laying down and I just like started screaming. I was like, who am I? Why the fuck am I here? What is my purpose? And just like questioning all of my internal reality and like noticing that the people that I was like currently surrounded by were not the people that I really wanted to be around. And if I was going to continue to stay around people like that, that could possibly be the reality that I end up in. And that wasn't the reality that I was here to choose. It was kind of just what I was unconsciously choosing, right? And so I after that moment, I packed up my bags and I left Oregon. And then I'm driving to back to Nebraska where my parents were living and where I was just going to go back to and kind of regather myself. And it's a snowy, slushy day. And there's this I was passing through Utah where the snow just melts immediately. And then you get into Wyoming and the snow starts to accumulate because there's no salt underneath the land there to like melt the snow. And so I'm going down this hill and it's starting to get really slushy and I switch lanes. And then all of a sudden my two back tires are starting to fishtail and I lose control. And it was such a metaphor for my life, like losing control. I was losing control of all of these situations and not really like being the real driver in my life. And in that moment, I'm holding on to the wheel like as hard as I can. And all of a sudden just I start sliding into the ditch. And something just told me to let go. Like something within my body with it was just like release. And I wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Um yeah, I was just like I was in Birkenstocks, like it was I was just like in a really comfy place, but anyways, my point is I just let go of the wheel and all of a sudden my as I'm sliding in the ditch, my front end clips and starts to barrel roll in the air. And I probably flew, I don't know, 100 yards in the air and landed upside down in the vehicle. And I gather myself and the car is completely totaled. And I just pull myself out of the vehicle. And I look up in the air and not a scratch on me, not like I wasn't injured, not a bruise, like nothing. And I was just like in awe of life and what I've been given. And knowing it was like the first time that I realized like life could literally be gone in an instant. And if I'm not living it to my fullest potential, if I'm not stepping into it every day as best as I can, authentically as I can, with strong boundaries, with my purpose and my vision, then was it worth it? And so, yeah, that experience really transformed my life to step into myself and to step into this passion that I have to help people and to inspire people to live a better life, to live healthier, to live more connected to the earth, connected to their self, their soul, to their family, to their friendships, and really honor their God-given purpose that I think we all have. We just have to kind of get out of our own way and allow it to happen and follow that beat of the heart. And so, yeah, that was like the pivot point where it's like, all right, enough of trying to get these jobs that I didn't care about, do these things that I didn't like just to make money. And now it's time to really follow what my heart is saying.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. It's really powerful. And sometimes, yeah, those experiences just completely alter, right? Course correct. It's the metaphor you use of like, holy shit, I wasn't the driver, right? It's like this autopilot that we're just conditioned to be on for all of our lives until, yeah, we wake up. That's an awakening, right? It's just waking up to your soul, waking up to yourself. And I think it happens to so many of us, but it's, are we going to listen, right? Are we going to surrender? Are we going to release? And yeah, really, really powerful shares. Thank you for sharing all of that. It's um so how did you in that moment, like after that car accident, after that, like what did you do next? Like how did you find coaching? How did you realize, okay, like, not if you have a 9 to 5 job, I love you guys. Like if you're listening, don't just like go out and quit your 9 to 5 or your steady income. Like this is for you if you have that piece of your heart that's like, wait, there's more, right? It's like, wait, there's more. I didn't know
Yeah.
that there was more, but there's more. So what was that transition like for you?
Yeah. So I had already been studying holistic lifestyle coaching prior to that. But I was kind of living in a place of fear to like show up and and yeah, still living more for the excitement of like the party. And I was smoking a lot, drinking a lot, and yeah, not really like doing what I knew what I needed to do, which is to like share the message, share the what we're capable of and how to course correct ourselves with our health, with our emotions, with our spirit. And yeah, when I came back, I had to regather myself. There was, it was a big crash and there was a lot of finances that I had to reaccumulate. But after 6 months, my dream was to always like go travel around the world and to go to Thailand and to Greece. And so yeah, I reconnected with my ex-girlfriend, a girl who I is now my ex-girlfriend. And we decided to, after 6 months, go to Thailand or go to Hawaii and Thailand and Greece and Bali, and just made ourselves around the world backpacking. And that was something that I was like super scared of. And so it was like, all right, I'm gonna do what I'm afraid of. And throughout that entire experience, it was a lot of documenting and writing blogs and just sharing my own experience of what I've learned in these different environments, in through these different cultures, all while bringing it back to health. And so that was like that was a transitional piece that then showed me, it got me more comfortable like speaking a message. And it was like this practice of sharing what was really on my heart, that I was afraid to do. I was afraid to, really speak my truth. And so that led me to then, um, yeah, writing blogs, doing videos, just documenting the process. And then after I came back, um, I started I had this other idea to like
Mhm.
go trout fishing around the state of Nebraska. And so we bought a van and started traveling out of the van and built it out and started fly fishing, just at these different little areas. And at the same time, like I was documenting and blogging, but like bringing it back to health. Like, yeah, there are these recreational things that we can do. And this is the reason why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because my soul is saying, hey, go do these things. And it was very non-traditional. And yeah, to your point, like I'm not suggesting people just like quit their 9 to 5. Um, my encouragement is to do the things that you've always wanted to do, because that's where you begin to find your magic. That's where you find this communication. That's where you build this muscle to listen to the heart, to listen to the soul, and do what's uncomfortable, and to maybe live a little bit more under your means, or sacrifice things in your life to then experience the abundance that's out there, not in the monetary, because life is so much more than just making money. It's the connections we can make with ourself, with other people, with nature, just in these present moments. That's where we can really experience, I find, the most of life. And I know there's so many people who define themselves by their work and their job, or what they're going to do, or how they make money, or whatever it is. But that's not what defines you. What defines you is how you show up as your individual self, how you care for other people, or what your how you care about yourself, what you think about yourself. All of these I am statements that we say, like that's what defines us. And so there are so many people living and doing things that they don't care about, that they don't want to do. And then they say, oh, I wish I could do that. Oh, you're so lucky that you can do
Mhm.
that. Or,
Yeah.
oh, I just, if I didn't live here, then I could do that. And I just said, fuck that. Like, I'm not buying into that bullshit.
That's a cop out. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, if you want to do it, you can do it. Like, I'm not rich. I don't have a ton of money. I didn't have a ton of money when I started these things. It was, I'm going to find a way, because I want to experience this life as best as I possibly can. And so, um, yeah, there was that transition of like just really following my soul and my heart. And then after like a lot of this traveling and van life, that's when I kind of was like, all right, cool. Now I've done these things, and now I know that it's possible for me to be nomadic. How can I bring that all together to make some extra money doing the things that I love to do? And that's when I really just opened up the doors for coaching and for health transformation, sharing nutritional products, and building a business through these avenues.
Amazing. Yeah, well, I'm just laughing because I've also been nomading, and it's interesting, and I'm sure you can feel this way too, because we were those people once too, right? Oh, I wish I could do that. Like I'm sure years ago you would see people on Instagram living the life you're now living,
Yeah.
right? And like, oh, I wish I could do those things. And now you're actually living it. And now other people are messaging you like, oh, you're so lucky. And like to give those people grace, because we were those people once, right? And it's like this life force, this will, like you said, like I'm just gonna find a way. I don't know how, but spirit's gonna lead me, my soul, whatever, my heart, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, just to feel the fear and do it anyway. And I feel like that's such a misconception for heart-centered leaders, is
Mhm.
that we aren't afraid.
Mhm.
It's like, no, we are. We're scared shitless half the time, but we're gonna try things, we're gonna do things, and it's gonna be messy. And I mean, I think entrepreneurship is probably one of the most crazy self-development journeys of our lives.
No doubt. That and
So,
relationships, it's
what'd you say?
that and relationships. Those are the two where areas that I've like, whoa, I didn't think I'd have to go through this in life.
Well, yeah, I mean, every relationship is a mirror, right? Every connection, whether it's romantic or not, it's this mirror energy. And yeah, what would you say to someone who, because I think sometimes too, people don't even know, like you said before, knowing who you are. And we grow up in this society where we're taught the status quo and taught to do things. And you shared that in your book of like just this like rote, like do what you're told to do. So what advice would you give someone who is kind of lost, who is in that moment of like kind of questioning their life and their career and maybe their partnership and maybe where they live? What would you say to them?
Mm, it's very nuanced. Um, I think every individual is different. I do a lot of inner child work with people, and so oftentimes the our conditions, our current reality is manifested at a young age. Um, and so, there's this beautiful song called Daydreaming that I've been introduced to recently. And it's basically talking about like when you're young, you have these, you play and you make up imaginary stories and nobody tells you that you're wrong. I,
Mhm.
most of the time it's like, oh yeah, that's a kid playing, right? And that's okay, that's great. And then there's like this tipping point where now you have to grow up. You have to be an adult and you have to know what you're going to do and you have to make money. And you can't be imaginative. You can't like think differently. You have to think like everybody else. And so I think if we can come back to what was the thing that was like really lighting us up as a child, and can you find a way to now like obviously imagining rocket ships and being up in space may not be the thing, but like maybe there's an underlying like archetype around that, like exploration or whatever it is. Can you create that in your present day to then say like, oh, as a kid I always wanted to be a nurse or like a teacher. um Maybe not being a school teacher is going to be the best thing for me, but can I be a teacher in some other aspect today? Or, oh, I always loved traveling to different times or places. Well, you can't go back in time travel, but maybe you can be an actor in that space, just revisiting those, or maybe an author writing about the past. Or if you were like somebody who's like, I want to go to space, how can you explore your reality today? And so I think there's one aspect, and also like really getting clear on like what lights your soul up, like what lights you on fire, what is something that scares you.
Mm.
Because like you said, feel the fear and do it anyways. And I'm afraid to do I was afraid to go travel around the world. I was afraid. I lived in Mexico for 6 months. I was afraid to go to Mexico and just like pick up and drop in. I was afraid to live in a van for 2 years. I was afraid to start my business. I'm afraid even like today, like what I'm gonna say. And I say it anyways. I do it anyways because that's like that's where we're most alive. But if
Mm.
we suppress it, then it creates this turmoil within us and this what if and this I wish I could. And the body keeps score. And so every time that we suppress our fear, every time that we suppress these emotions and these feelings, and the things that we're here to do and be, it ends up manifesting itself in some other form. And oftentimes it's mental depression or anxiety or physical pain. Um,
Disease, right? Like it
disease.
actually becomes manifest physically. And yeah, it's I love that you're just sharing that. It's like, yeah, we're afraid. It's we don't know what we're gonna say. We don't know what we're gonna do. We're just leading ourselves. And I love that you shared that in your chapter too. It's like you get to lead yourself and just be an example, right? Like be this example, not force our views down anyone's throats, not tell people what to do, or you know quote unquote heal people. It's like we lead by example, and there are going to be some people that enjoy it and that resonate, and there are going to be some people that don't. But if we are following, I like my heart's on fire. If we are following that truth within us that was suppressed since childhood, right? And I say that too all the time. It's like, what lit you up as a child? For me, it was like being teacher to my dolls and telling them and teaching and speaking to things, and giving them information and wisdom, and seeing like the light bulb in friends. It's like that's what lights me up, is reminding people of their own power, reminding people of what's inside of them. So yeah, it's feeling that fear and doing it anyway. So I there was one sentence in your chapter that um, really spoke to me, and it was when we are able to de-stress and exit the monkey mind of past or future thought and simply be, we are able to feel. For if we want to feel better, we must get better at feeling.
Mhm.
Can you speak to that? Because I was like, woo. I'm like, do you even remember writing? Because I don't remember writing half of my chapter.
I forgot that I wrote that sentence.
The next one's really good too, about how goosebumps are like whispers from God. I was like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
okay. These are good. Good nuggets.
Some good one-liners in there, huh? Yeah, yeah. I think something that I alluded to earlier is that like we are highly pressurized in the mind to like do things and be things and constantly, produce. And we're in this society of go, 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 and all of this conditioning of news and television and just all this stuff. And I think that creates, and then the influence of FOMO, of Instagram. And it's amazing that we have these tools and we can see where people are going, but it also creates this story of like, oh, I'm not good enough to do that, or like, oh, I wish I could do that, or like, it's just all these stories that pop up as we're looking at a screen and just like being in this mental space. And so the idea is, if we can release that, let go of what the mind is constantly talking about, because really the mind with human design, this is where it like really anchored in for me when this analogy was brought up. The mind is the passenger consciousness. And so it's here to observe. It's here to witness. It's here to sit in the passenger seat of the vehicle and just be in awe of the beauty around us. It's not here to play backseat driver or passenger driver, like, oh, you're supposed to turn here. Like when you're in the driver's seat, person's like telling you which direction, and you're like, shut the fuck up. Like, I know where I'm going, or I know how to drive. Right? That's the mind. And the the driver of the vehicle is the G center, which is this space right at our chest. What I like to refer to it is the soul. And so the soul is driving our vehicle. It's driving where we're going. And if we listen to the soul, we'll never be steered awry. And then the root, or the sacral center, is considered the engine of the vehicle. And so that's like what propels us forward. That's what gives us the motor to go. And so if we're stuck in the mind, we're just going to go around in circles or like not really know where we're going. We're just going where maybe others want us to go. And so if we can get into our body and feel what our body is feeling and be present with that, that's when we can begin to really communicate with our soul. And we can move. Like this is why I love dance. When I'm just moving and I'm in my body and I'm feeling the nuances of the sensations around me with the touch of another person within the touch of myself, or the emotions that come up through the music or through this like this movement, I have these like messages pouring through, and I'm not thinking about like, what am I supposed to do tomorrow? What am I going to have for dinner?
What's
Or
my
like,
to-do list? Yeah.
yeah, or like, was that something I should have said to that person? No, all these messages just come through of like purpose, of passion, of an aha, an idea of how I can, I don't know, work with my reality in a more present way. And so, yeah, when we get better at feeling,
Mm.
learn how to feel and get better at feeling, then I think that's when we can really tune into the communication of the soul, of the G center, of our heart. And we're able to witness when our heartbeat is racing, that is really a sign of excitement,
Mm.
or I mean, it could be a sense of fear. And instead of attaching a story to it, a mindful story to it of, oh no, my heart's racing. I remember the last time my heart was racing and this event happened. And so I don't want to let my heart race like that. So I'm going to shut it down and I'm going to retreat and I'm going to protect myself and stay safe. Um, that's what the mind will do. It'll protect ourselves to say, hey, remember that time? Remember that time that happened? We don't want that to happen again. So let's turn to the right rather than leaning into it and seeing like what will actually happen if we face it in a way that's present, in a way where we can like drop into our body and acknowledge that the heart is racing and see what beauty can come out of that if we just lean into it. I know I'm kind of talking in like, I don't know, it's
You're just
sometimes I don't even know
flowing.
what I'm saying, but yeah, I think that's the idea, is when we get better at feeling what's happening in our body and we don't attach a story to it, we don't attach our mindful programs to it, and we can allow it to happen, then that's where like the real magic of life happens. Like for me, I was always afraid of public speaking, and I would get sweaty and
Me too.
profusely sweaty. And I would notice my heart racing and like I would just get super nervous. And I didn't know how to work with that. I didn't know how to feel that. I would just create a story in my mind. But then once I began to learn how to regulate that, like, okay, I acknowledge that. I acknowledge that my heart is racing. What can I do? I can take in a deep breath. I can slow my breath down. I can slow my heart rate down. And I can go up there and have the courage to share and do it anyways. And the next thing I know, I get off stage and I'm like high as a kite. I'm like, whoa, that was fucking awesome. And instead of allowing that fear to shut us down, that mind to shut us down and protect us, we do it anyways. And that's where I think the threshold of life is.
Mm. So many nuggets in there. Um, yeah, it's almost like when we move, whether it's dance, whether it's sweat, working out, whatever it is, nonlinear movements, linear movements, it kind of clears that gunk. right? It clears those conditions, those programming, and yeah, we just become this like clear channel to what is meant to flow through us, right? Which is inspiration and ideas and magic. And I love what you said about leaning into these emotions rather than allowing the mind, which, our ego, our mind is here for a reason. It's here to protect us, right? It's here to help us survive. But there are emotions that like are we're meant to alchemize. We're meant to feel because they're the actual messengers to our transformation, to um, who we're here to be, and leaning into the discomfort, right? Because what's that? It's a phrase of like nothing grows in our comfort zone, right? Like nothing grows there. So just leaning in, and I'm sure you express that to your clients. I know I do to mine. It's scary. It's scary
Mhm.
because that's why I love that line, because in our society, I mean, men and women, no one is we're leaning more into it, but no one is taught. We're not taught this in school. We're not taught emotional regulation. We're not taught that. There's this really good book on anger. It's like Anger, the Misunderstood Emotion.
Mhm.
Because anger can actually be like an alchemist, right? It
Mhm.
can be not alchemist, it could be the catalyst to
Driving
change.
force. Yeah.
And we shy away from it, right? It's shameful. It's not a good emotion. So yeah, leaning into that. Whew.
Yeah, and on top of that, something that I noticed you've been sharing about is like grief, right? And yeah, people will experience grief and then shut it down and just be like, oh, it's no big deal. And something that like these emotions have opposing forces. And I think when we feel the grief and we allow ourselves to acknowledge that, it's also joyful because it allows us to come back to what was so beautiful that we lost and how
Mhm.
that impacted us. And it's something that's come up for me lately. It's like I've met some really amazing people and they're kind of leaving my life for a moment, for a few months or so. And I had this like grieving moment. It's like, man, I'm gonna miss them. And then it instantly reminded me of like, wow, all of these things that they've given me, they're leaving behind, but like I am now who I am because they entered into my life.
Mm,
And so with every emotion, there's an ability to reflect and, to your point, alchemize it, catalyze it into, the opposing force of it.
yeah, there was a quote I read, something like grief is just love that doesn't know where to go.
Mm,
And it's moving into um, when we feel grief or when we feel really heavy emotions, we're alive,
mhm,
right? We're not numb because we're taught to have this coping mechanism, like to minimize our trauma, to minimize, you say you do a lot of inner child work, and I do as well, and it's so crucial because a lot of us were just taught to minimize. We had parents or caregivers that did the best they could, but I mean, in those generations, a lot of mental health and therapy wasn't talked about. It was just brushed under the rug. And I think grief, and I mean, anger, shame, guilt, it makes you feel alive again. And it's scary, right? It's like, holy shit, I am fucking alive right now. Like this is it. And I'm a person that goes deep. If I feel something, it's like I'm here. I gotta feel it. And that circles back to the beginning of our conversation where we're on Earth, and Earth is the school for emotions, the like playground for emotion. So yeah, to numb it or suppress it or distract ourselves, right? Like it's the holiday season when we're recording this. And I've noticed like the holiday season is also probably the time when people feel grief the most, right? Whether they've lost loved ones or exes or pets or whatever, it doesn't even past selves of past versions of who we are. But it's also the most distracting time of year, right?
Mm,
It's holiday and festive and you're seeing a lot of people. And I noticed that polarity last week and I was like, wow. Um, yeah, to allow yourself to feel, to allow yourself to be and and lead others in that way and share from our hearts. It's vulnerable.
yeah. Yeah. And in those vulnerable spaces, that's where our authenticity pours. And then we give permission to other people to be vulnerable, to be authentic, and to transmute, these challenges that we've had in our life, to come to gratitude, to come to like
Mm,
the beauty of it all. And, the life that we're given, the life that we have. Yeah. One of the things that I do a lot of work in is like subconscious rewiring for people. And um, you know, I'm able to see like what emotions are being held in without being felt. And like it's profound where, I don't know the whole story of what's happening for people, but I'll just say, hey, this emotion's coming up. I feel that this emotion is something that you've you've been suppressing, or that's like it's present with you that you haven't acknowledged. And then they're like, oh my gosh, this. And I'm like, good, like great. We don't have to like go into the whole story of it, but like allow yourself to feel that.
mm,
Give yourself permission to feel that. And now, how do you intend to show up after that? What's your choice? Do you want to continue to feel that, or do you want to move through it? And so we always have a choice, but I think it starts with the moment of giving ourselves permission to feel it. And and then that's when we can, like I said, transmute it and move and work with the power of it to then guide us into the next step of our life. And um yeah, I mean, it could be like with pain, it could be like back pain, it could be neck pain or something in your foot. And it's just like there's an emotion to it. Could be, not always. Um, but the subconscious is operating about 90% of our reality, 80 to 90% of our reality. And so when we do work with our emotions and we allow ourselves to feel it, then we begin to have more clarity in our reality of why things are happening to us unconsciously. And then these nagging injuries, the disease, the pain, they begin to dissipate because we allow ourselves to feel it. We allow ourselves to go into it and say, okay, I acknowledge you. I feel you. That's no longer the story. That's no longer the program that I'm operating in. And I choose this instead. And then all of a sudden, the pain goes away and reality shifts and new relationships come in, abundance comes in, um, better health comes in because we can work with this subconscious reality and make just like a minute change.
not judge ourselves, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's even just acknowledging, like literally, it's so powerful just to say, I'm really feeling blank right now. Like just saying that out loud, every time we speak, we're sending messages to ourselves and it's really powerful. And I know you work with a lot of men and that's amazing because I think men need this work so much in this world that it's it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. Can you share more about that, about being able to help fellow men like work through their emotions that really, I mean, that's that phrase like boys don't cry, stand up, get, and you did sports. So can you share that too, of
Yeah.
working through sports and that culture of being strong and brave?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there is this societal programming of, men to like suppress their feelings. And I think there is a divine masculine aspect of being strong and like having courage and the integrity of maybe the warrior archetype or the king archetype. Um, and there's also the shadow sides of these, of like being a tyrant and being um uh yeah, being a dismissive warrior or whatever it is. And so the idea is just to come back to giving ourselves that permission to feel these things that we've suppressed. And then when we do that, that's when we can find more courage and more inner strength, because we create the space for ourselves to then rise up and to um ultimately, I think one of our purposes as men is to create safety, create safety in this earthly plane, to be a grounded individual, and to provide not like the necessarily like the financial security, but just the safety, like I can be who I am in the presence of this person. And oftentimes if we are, yeah, not feeling our feelings or suppressing our feelings, there's going to be an underlying turmoil within us, an underlying rage, an underlying anger, an underlying shame. And this ultimately creates uh, a lack of safety and a lack of authenticity and a lack of security, because we're not safe or secure within ourselves.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I think it's super necessary for the world right now. And we we've had a hard time. Like we've, men have done some really amazing things in the world. Um, building a lot of things, but like, society in a way. Um, and there's been a lot of pressure to, yeah, to be somebody that we're not.
Mm.
And anytime I always share this, anytime that, and it goes for men and women, but anytime that men we feel shame or guilt, or like we suppress that shame and that guilt, we are disrupting our hormones. Testosterone actually decreases. Um, and when we can release that shame, when we can feel it, we can release it and then move into a place of more inner confidence and trust within ourselves, our hormones begin to rebalance. And so I do a lot of work with male bonding. And when we get together and we can drop the stories and just authentically share what's coming up and allow ourselves to like recognize that shame, all of a sudden there's this like potent charge in the room. And we're just like, it's not like a testosterone, like, oh, macho man. It's like a embodied love and care for each other. And that then carries over into our relationships, that carries over into, you know allowing women to feel safe around us, because there's a lot of women that don't feel safe around men. whether that's through sexualization or just like inner anger. Like women are highly sensitive, like super sensitive to just the unseen world. And if we have these like pent up emotions, it it scares people away. And I know a lot of guys, wonder like why they can't get into a relationship or why like their relationships fail. And a lot of it comes down to like, are you allowing them to feel safe?
Mm,
And part of that is, yes, the physical aspect of being strong. And it's the aspect of being strong within ourselves to say, you know what, I'm okay. I acknowledge these stories. I acknowledge these emotions that I have, and I can maintain a presence within myself because I've worked through it. And I now can be there and listen to the individual and um yeah, not be driven by our emotions, not be driven by like the anger that might come up and stir us and just like piss a guy off, or the sexual like lust that comes up. Like, can you maintain your presence without being lustful
mm,
around a woman? And when you do that, that's when these guards drop, and we can like, I always say, whether that's in like sales or in relationships, the reason people run away isn't because you're saying the wrong thing. It's because you're activating their nervous system to fight or flight. And so if you can maintain your own presence of parasympathetic nervous system, which is regulation, you have to know how to work with your emotions and not be overrun by them, then you can drop the guard and really begin to connect with the individual. And so, yeah, I think that's really important for men because most men don't know how to connect. They don't know how to connect with themselves, and therefore they don't know how to connect with women or other people or whatever it is.
beautiful. Yeah. I mean, it comes down to the individual always, right? We can't be and hold space, man or a woman, right? We can't be or hold space for another person if we're not doing it for ourselves, if we're not holding ourselves accountable and having that autonomy to know, circles back to what we've started with, to know who we are, to know
Mhm.
what we want, to know what we desire, um, and to stand in that balance too of our inner feminine and masculine, right? Which is all of us. Like people sometimes hear feminine and it's like, no, I'm a man. It's like, yeah, you're half feminine, we are both. Um, but it does come down to that safety and the pressure. I feel like so many men just feel the pressure of society, of providing, of being a certain way, like you said, like being someone who they're not, but it's just this programming to show up in this alpha way. And alpha is not bad, but it has to be embodied, it has to be grounded. um, yeah, thank
Mhm.
you for sharing all that.
Yeah, thanks for asking the question.
Yeah, so we are coming to the end of this hour, and I really enjoyed this conversation. I think we touched on a lot of different topics and we flowed, right? It always flows. It's like, I don't know what I said. It's all meant to be here.
Yep.
So where can people find you? Where can people work with you? And yeah, share.
Yeah, you guys, for the listeners, you guys can listen or you can find me at JPK Experience on Instagram, and Facebook is John Paul Kingston. And then my website is jpkexperience.com. It's still in a little bit of a working phase right now. It's just fine tuning some details, but that should be up soon. And yeah, that's where people can find me. And if you want to work with me, one of the best places right now is to go to my Instagram and my link tree, which is in the little bio, and then you can take a look at my calendar and look at some of the offerings that I have.
Awesome. And I'll
Yeah.
share that in the show notes as well. Um, and yeah, check out our book, Heart Centered Leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Here to
thank you
change
so
the
much.
world. Yep. You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Of course.